I'm a highly ambitious woman building something for myself and for my family. Something that, has no ceiling, but also just allows me to have much more flexibility to be present when I want to be present.
I chose Elizabeth Field DiGiovanni to be the very first guest on this podcast next because she represents so much of what this podcast is all about. On the surface, it's a story about somebody who gets laid off and decides to build something new, but it's really much deeper than that. She launched her new business, Parcel Air, in 9 days, which is crazy, but don't worry, it's not a perfectly planned out story because none of us have that. She shares vulnerably what it's like to be a working mom, the demands that come with it, and her own role in the burnout that she experienced. She talks about finding her Ikigai, which is one of my favorite concepts. The literal translation for this Japanese word is reason for being. And we talk about how it's the perfect intersection of what you love to do, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can get paid for. If you're interested in finding your own Ikigai, that's going to be the subject of my next workshop this fall. You can sign up for the waitlist at ericaparkerprice.com/find-your-next. There's no commitment needed now, but you'll be the first to find out. I'm excited for you to hear all about Elizabeth's startup called Parcel Air, which delivers a physical product designed to keep young children entertained and their parents sane while traveling at 30,000 feet. Elizabeth, welcome to the podcast. I want to start out and ask, how would you introduce yourself to my listeners?
That's a great question. I would introduce myself first and foremost as now a new budding entrepreneur. This is a new vocabulary for me in terms of my descriptor. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a mom. I'm a highly ambitious woman who, over a series of events that transpired, has really decided essentially to take control and take my power back and move from what formerly ambition looked like for me, which was climbing the corporate ladder at big places like TikTok, like Meta, and instead building something for myself and for my family. Something that, has no ceiling, but also just allows me to have much more flexibility to be present when I want to be present, and present where I want my energy present for.
So many good words in there. Ceiling, like no ceiling, and being
No
present.
ceiling.
I love that. We'll come back around to some of your background, but I want to share with our audience the way I found you was on Substack, which is brand new to me, and I think fairly new for you. Am I right? Okay.
Brand new. Brand
Okay,
new.
so we're both brand new to Substack, and the whole thing when you're new to Substack is like find people that are like you, find people doing cool things. And I saw a story about a woman who had very recently been laid off from Meta and had launched her own business already. So I want you to tell that story because that is literally why I invited you to be on this show.
I'm excited to tell you about it. And you know what? It's really fitting because as we're talking today, it was exactly 60 days ago. May 20th was, the day. And let me talk you through that day. So I have spent the last 15 years at Meta, at TikTok, and, especially in the last couple of years, Erica, like no stranger to layoffs. So it would be not entirely truthful to say, oh my gosh, this was a massive surprise. I was not expecting it. But as much as somebody cannot expect it, I think that was me. I had recently just moved internally to a new role with incredible people within WhatsApp. I was so excited about it. Like the mission was so clear. We had so much work to do and we were already operating really leanly. So maybe through naivety or just sheer, like, I finally feel like I've hit that magic spot of a role where, I'm compensated well. I'm working with incredible collaborative people. And I actually have work that I am very excited about that I believe in. I was like, it's not going to be me. They said something externally that was like 10%. I was feeling fairly confident going into that night, knowing that there would be a 4 a.m. email. I slept through it. I totally slept through it, which is out of character for me. But that is how, I guess, surprised I was at finding out when I then woke up, at 5:15 and saw that you have been impacted and your access is immediately cutting out was destabilizing, to say the least. And, I've always been entrepreneurial. It's something I've exploring. We've met on Substack where I've just started writing there about the intersection of motherhood and ambition. I also run a vintage furniture sourcing small boutique outfit. Um, and both of those things I have been doing for the last 6 months in the margins of work, thinking,
Mhm.
this is something that I would love to do full time one day. For right now, it's the creative outlet. It is something that I'm slowly building and working towards. It's the things on the back burner that I would love to say one day, I'm a founder. I have a business that supports me and my family.
And really building a tiny bit of a runway. You weren't like, I'm going to go build out the massive runway, but I want
100%.
to just play with a little bit of the kernels of this creativity, ambition, entrepreneurship.
Exactly. It was about just like finding, what actually fills my cup as well.
Mm-hmm.
There's, a lot of times when I think about ambition, probably like yourself, like there's a blueprint and there's a path for a lot of like high achieving women, right? It's you go to college, get the good grades. I was like editor in chief of my college newspaper. Got to the end of that and I was like, well, I'm going to go to grad school. And then I went to grad school again. And then I got the startup job and then I got the big tech job. And then I climbed the ladder to manager and overseeing large, extensive teams. And we talked in the beginning about that ceiling. It's what next? Like, where do I go from here? And also, am I willing to make the trade offs, right? Like, I loved my work, but I could feel it distinctly also in home of like where my energy was going. I wrote about this on my Substack, but there was a moment where I have a 4-year-old and 2-year-old at home, and my 4-year-old, he loves playing imaginary games. So like mommy and baby. And he was like, let's play mommy and baby. And of course, he was the mommy and I was the baby. And I
Of
laid down
course,
on the
as the
couch.
4-year-old brain
Of
works.
course. And so he was like, I'm going to tuck you in, baby. And he leans over and he gives me a kiss on the forehead and he says, okay, mommy's not going to be here when you wake up because she has to get in the office really early. So you're going to be a good boy for daddy. And it like tore me apart, Erica, because I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, oh my God, like what am I modeling? Because the first instinct my child has to, I'm going to perform motherhood is I am not going to be here. I'm not going to be present. And that is like where his brain immediately went to. It wasn't like, what can I get you for a snack? Or shall we go to the park today? It was, mommy's not going to be here because she has to go to work, which is true because that was his lived experience because I was waking up at the crack of dawn to have Asia meetings with an RTO5 back in the office, butts and seats, and I would be out from morning until night. And I remember thinking to myself, like, you know what? This is a great schedule for a mom with young kids because I'm out the door early. They're in daycare. When I get home from, 3 to 5, I'm open. No one needs me
Just the
again.
justification lies
The
that you tell yourself.
justification. No one needs me until my next round of meetings at 8 p.m. after they're in bed. But then I'm up till 2 a.m. And I definitely got to the place of burnout of you're constantly emptying your cup. I was constantly chasing these feelings of disappointment in myself, grief, unknowing of like, every day it would keep me awake being like, am I making the right choices? Is my energy going to the right space? And I do really think, you know, as much as it can be, I'm not on the other side of it yet with the layoff, but
You're
much as
only
it
at
can
60
be.
days. Like you're just a baby and you're in the infancy of this. So I'm impressed that you have as much insight as you do. You talked about the trade-offs. So like the energy, the time, anything else?
I think it's the energy and the time, but it just like goes so much deeper. Like at the end of last year, I was at a real state of burnout, where I actually took a medical leave of absence from my position. I, was burning the candle at all ends. And I, for the first time in my life, was having real physical manifestations of this outside of just the like emotional or mental, where I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping. And, it became a little bit of the chicken or the egg. Is it like, am I not functioning because I'm not eating or sleeping? Or am I not eating and sleeping because I'm so stressed out about not functioning? And so I think that for me too was a real catalyst to look around me, like understand better, like what is taking my energy? What am I modeling for my family and for my kids? And what am I even modeling for the people around me? I'm, again, so invested in my career and ambition. And that manifested a lot for me, especially as a people manager, being really invested in my people and my folks. Like they are my extended children. And I was thinking, what am I modeling for them when I am up at all hours, emailing around the clock, not asking things of them, but following up on this thing I forgot to send you. And here's the answer to the question you asked me at 10 a.m. today, but now it's 2 a.m. and I'm getting back to you. I can't sleep until I close this loop. I think I was able to recognize in taking that leave and doing a lot of the work, including, therapy, medication, all of the things of really reflecting on, am I living my values? Am I organizing my life around the life I want to have? And the answer was like a clear and resounding no.
It's very interesting because I didn't know that piece about you, that you had taken medical leave. As a career coach, I can't tell you the number of people that I coach in the lead up to taking medical leave, during the medical leave, and the what comes after. It's a much higher overlap than I would have ever guessed. But it seems like you actually did some of the work of this. Am I living my values? Like that kind of work actually kind of started to happen. But you did decide to go back. Tell me what that was, because I think that's interesting that you kind of had that time to, and of course you're recovering your body, right? Like physically your body is giving you all those signs, and it's real. But what was your decision to go back at that time?
I'll be so real with you, Erica. Like I had no intention of going back. When I decided to take my leave, it was rose colored glasses a little bit. Like it was a medical leave. Like I had a panel of doctors who were like,
Yes.
urgently, you need this time. Um, but I think in my head, I had built it up to be like, I'm going to come out the other side of this with a really tidy story on resilience. I'm going to, take the time. I'm going to do the therapy. I'm going to talk to psychiatrists. I'm going to rest. I'm going to do all of the things. And then I'm going to find the job search, or I'm going to go hard on it. I'm going to open up the LinkedIn. I'm going to find something um, that is more aligned to the values I have, the work style I have. I'm going to come out the other side with thank you so much. I've found my path forward. That didn't happen.
Tidy. I
Especially
love that word, tidy. Like you were gonna manage that medical leave, burnout, all of
absolutely.
that into such a beautiful little package with a bow on the
Well, it was
top.
totally. It was going to
Great
be, yeah, I
plan.
was going to
Great
come
plan.
back. I was going to say, thank you so much. I was going to I took this time to reflect and here's what I'm doing next kind of thing. No, it didn't happen that way. Of course not. It took me maybe like 4 full weeks just to get on my feet to be able to turn on the TV. Like it was a lot of just decompressing, being able to just get back to my normal level of functioning. I did do some interviewing with like some success, but at the end of the day, it didn't result in anything meaningful. And I quickly got back to the place of I'm going to have to re-enter, and I'm going to have to re-enter into a toxic environment, one that I'm not thrilled to be a part of, and one where I knew reputationally, there, even if it's unintentional or passive, that would be something that would stay with me, if not externally, in like inside me. It would be something that I would be projecting, knowing that I took time away. What does this say? Like I knew it was not a healthy place for me to go back to, even if it's self-invented. And so I was looking, for still anything really rapidly and searching hard, while at the same time, in the preparation for going back, I worked a lot with my wonderful therapist about better understanding like the boundaries, the lines, like how can I go back with confidence that I won't immediately go back to the place of burnout, that I won't take on everything on my plate, say yes to everyone, that I'll be able to actually manage and, while not an ideal situation, live more of the values of like, we did a lot of the conversation of like, what is the worst thing that would happen if you didn't respond to that email tonight? And it would be like, I would have like, I could feel it now, like the
Well, I
panic
can even see
rising
it.
in my
Like your
chest. Yeah.
shoulders go up, the breathing
Yeah.
stops.
Like,
Like, I can't do
oh
that.
my goodness, I can't. And then, it was a lot of understanding like what is a physical trigger or like what is actually reality, right? Like, and getting to a lot of the question I keep asking myself of is like, so what? Like, I don't answer this email. The person's a little miffed and like it will be fine. So I went in kind of like armed with my toolkit of here are all my tactics that I'm going to do to protect myself from myself, essentially. And, give my 100%, but no more my 135%, because that's taking from other places. It's taking from my family, it's taking from my community, it's taking from the things that I love, it's taking from my enjoyment, and it's taking from my health. I was lucky enough to, have some conversations internally. I'd been at Meta for a long time. So while I wasn't having, a wonderful experience, I had such a strong network of people who knew my reputation, who knew my work, that I was able to, find another internal opportunity that I had moved into.
Both can be true. Like
Totally.
you can be in a toxic work environment and burning out and love the people that you're working with and believe
Totally.
in at least parts of the mission. It isn't black or white.
No, it is so hard. And I think that's really the hardest part, right? Is like, it's hard. One of the hardest things to do, which I really think was a turning point for me, is like recognizing your own participation in perpetuating what could be a toxic cycle. It could be one thing for me to think out loud, oh, I had, a manager that was unsupportive, or I had a team that like wasn't collaborative, none of which were true in that situation. Everyone was so lovely. But I think that could be the hardest part when it's like not an incredible fit is how do you reflect on yourself and say, how much of this am I projecting or how much of this am I building up of terms of the stress, in terms of the burnout, and how much of myself am I giving when that's not actually the expectation, but it's the expectation that I set for myself.
So you were able to go back. And I saw your job title. I don't remember, but it had the word AI in it, which is like the title that everybody wants, like some sort of AI title. And we talked about how you were surprised that day. Walk me through that time period between when you were laid off and how you had that
Yeah,
epiphany of, I think I know what I'm going to do.
it's really quick. I was laid off at 4 a.m. I found out by 5:15, and before 9 a.m. I had an LLC filed for my company, for Parcel Air. So, it was something I mentioned, I had been doing so much in the margins. I had it very much in the back of my head.
But that wasn't one of the things you mentioned earlier, right? You said, like, I
No,
started a Substack. I had this
it just was
vintage
a little idea.
furniture business,
Yeah.
but little kernel of an idea for this Parcel Air.
A
Okay.
little kernel of an idea. I just knew this is something I do with my kids every time I'm on a flight. Moms, grandmothers, dads are always like, I should have thought about that. Like, I wish, I would pay for that. So Parcel Air is a curated box of activities for, right now we support 0 to 8 years old. We just launched our 6 to 8 box. And what it does is it's a ritual and experience that takes the really, really stressful bits of travel, sitting on an airplane at 30,000 feet. I think, all parents have been there of there's that moment where you're like, this is it. It's 4 wrapped presents that are each Montessori inspired, screen free, noise free activities that are developmentally appropriate for each age that really keep kids engaged throughout the flight. And there's a ritual card that comes with it of when to allocate out the presents. And it really makes the experience something to look forward to instead of like, this is the hard part before the fun vacation. So we have mantra of wait until wheels up, meaning that, your children are excited, you're talking to them about their presents, but they don't get to open the first thing until the plane takes off. And then through there, it's a little bit of a curated journey. So examples of things that we have in our parcels, everything is either, a trusted brand that you know and love. We have wonderful partners like Jellycat, like Candy Lab Wooden Cars, or they're like indie brands that are great for discovery with a focus on either female small businesses or specifically like US created. So an example is we have my favorite thing in the box is we have beeswax crayons that are sourced from a small honey farm in Santa Barbara. It's a woman who creates these like beautiful natural crayons that I would never have discovered if I wasn't, looking and trying to find really premium items that really just like matched the intention of what I wanted to live my life. When, I mentioned this was a ritual I did with me and my kids, and anytime before we would travel, I would always have these really grand ambitions of being like, we're going to Denver. So I'm going to get, the Denver board book, and I'm going to get the little like, car with the tree on top of it for them. And I'm going to make it this beautiful experience. But then life happens and I'm sitting on my phone and, 2 a.m. on Amazon being like, what will get here tomorrow? What will
Right.
get
I
here?
need something that has 6-hour delivery, not
Correct.
tomorrow, 6 hours.
100%. And these are always the things that I was like, I would never actually want in my home. It's the cheap plastic junk that you would find in the airport, or, there's only so many Southwest Airlines, bless them, the little, airplane toys that we could actually keep in this house. Or they'd be things where, the whole time they were playing with it, I'm like, please forget it in the hotel. Like, please don't let this come into my home.
Don't want it to come home.
I don't want this to come home. This noisy, squeaky chicken, please, no. And so what I'm doing here is just bridging the gap of, a customer wrote it in a review back to me. So I'm going to try to quote it from memory because I basically have it seared in my memory. But she was like, this helps me be the parent I want to be, which was like, exactly. Everyone has so much on their plate. You want to create those magical moments for your kids. You want to create those core memories or those rituals that you have that they'll remember when they're older. I also have so many parents who reached out and say, oh, I remember like my grandmother doing this for me or my aunt did this for me. And it's those moments that you want to create and you want to make it easy for people to access because we've never been busier. There's so much on all of our plates. And as a mom of two, but in talking to so many moms, there's so much guilt around, I could be doing more. I could be doing more. And I think even in that's like the thesis, right? Across work, across your home life, I could be doing more. So what I'm trying to do is take that emotional burden off and make it easy for parents to show up the way they want to be and create the memories they want to create without spending hours and hours and hours in days, planning, sourcing, buying, and instead having something ready to go that they can create those memories with their children and then be present and relax and enjoy the journey instead of bracing.
Bracing, yes. It's the word presence that really stands out for me because your child wants you to be present right then. They have no idea if you slept last night or if you spent all these hours scouring Amazon and wrapping packages and, packing the bag and all those things. Like they just need you. They need you right there, right then. You don't have to spend all that time shopping and buying and the things that you were trying to fit in on the margins.
Totally. Okay. And I feel like I keep getting off track because you keep asking me, walk me through that morning.
Okay.
And then I go down a rabbit hole.
All good. All good. I will pull you back to it. So it's 9 a.m. You create an LLC for your company that you've been sort of dreaming of in the past.
Yeah.
We're only 60 days out. How is it that you're already shipping product? Like walk me through that period, not even all the 60 days, but to where you launch your website and are taking orders.
So very concretely, after spending, 15 years in tech, I was like, I need some operational muscle around this. I need to plan this out. And so what I even did, knowing that I had, knock on wood, like for all intents and purposes, fairly generous severance. I was like, I'm going to take 6 weeks of this as a gift to myself to really go full throttle and pursue these ideas I have. And not go immediately into the job search because I thought it was really two paths. I could do the safe path, which was I'm going to buckle down. I'm going to put that banner on LinkedIn and I'm going to, sit and I'm going to apply to 10 jobs every day until, I get some callbacks. I'm going to go through the process and maybe I'll keep doing this in the margins. And instead, what I chose to do was give myself that 6 weeks with a really concrete plan behind it to see what can I build. And I will also caveat that knowing that what I would create in 6 weeks, let alone 6 months or even probably 6 years, is never going to replace a FANG salary. But maybe it will give me the foundation that I could do something more aligned with my values, maybe more aligned either with my values about what kind of company I want to work at or what kind of work I want to be doing in the world, but also more aligned to my values of what do I want to be doing in the world every day. And, if that looks like opening up to more fractional work opportunities or contract work or part time, that I would be able to pursue this while I continue building. So, what I did was very concretely filed the LLC, got the Instagram handle, and built out probably the first 2 days, which is building out the sprint across these verticals. So I organized through Claude, my chief of staff, Claude. I organized really like my life into various pillars. I organized it around what I called like the bridge, which was like finances and stability. And then I had concretely like a project for everything that was going to like drive income. Substack, my furniture sourcing side hustle that I was working through, Parcel Air as an idea and concept. And then also we have a short-term rental in Austin, Texas, our former primary family home. So I was like, every week what are the goals that I need to do to advance this? And how can I iterate week over week to build, to launch, to do the things I really don't know how to do? And I think the scariest part was just jumping in and doing and launching into being like, I'm going to run a small business because that's frightening. And I think it's, I mentioned I've always thought of myself as very entrepreneurial. I'll sit with a glass of wine with my girlfriends and we'll be like, oh, what are we going to start? Like, what business would we run? If we could do anything, what would it be? This is a great business idea. But in terms of actually going out and doing it, it is also just like a lot of, I don't know. Like, what does sourcing mean? What does opening a Shopify look like? Even filing an LLC, I was like, I don't know even the first step of saying, I have an idea. Now, how do I take it to reality? And I think that is one of the places that like AI has been so instrumental for me, and especially instrumental for me in being able to launch so quickly. Because as you mentioned, it's been 60 days. When we launched, it hasn't been 60 days. We launched in 9 days, which is wild for pre-orders. We sold out the first day organically, no paid advertising, just, hitting the right notes on Substack, on LinkedIn, and just connecting with the right audiences. I won't lie. You would say like we're running net neutral right now, which is a massive win. I'm like, I am not in debt in this business. And that
Neutral's
feels like
amazing.
and that feels like a win.
Because
but
you're bootstrapping this. Like, just to be clear, there's no VC investment. Nobody gave you a blank check to go do this. So you did have to outlay cash to go buy the product, for example.
Correct. Yes, I have, and I am, still there. I have an Affirm, a 0% Affirm, 90-day where every week I'm paying $150 towards that principal from the account. But I am running net neutral, which is something I'm really proud of because, again, I don't have a job, Erica. Like I am constantly thinking about runway and money and risk. And going into it, that was really my chief fear was what if I'm investing significantly and I, put anything I have at risk because I don't have the runway of a full-time job or employment or a steady paycheck coming every 2 weeks. So I had to be really careful about this, and this is something that I've talked to so many female founders about who I've been connecting with, is, the trade-offs of getting investors and seed money or moving at a slower pace, but fully owning what you're doing. And that is really the principle that it came down to for me, and it still is today, of being a little bit resistant to outside funding or seeking investments outside of, my my dear firm. Leaving the corporate world and even pursuing entrepreneurialism, I think I've become so disillusioned with the idea that having a full-time employment is stability, because it hasn't been for me. I was in my, dream role. I was doing the work. I was doing really meaningful work. I was having incredible results, and I was laid off. Not performance based, but it's just the luck of the cards in some cases. It really affected close to 80% of my team. And so there isn't necessarily a stability there. And so
It,
what I can create on my own, I own. I feel this so deeply. The investments I'm making, the harder I work, the more cents that are in my pocket, in a way that wasn't articulated working for a massive company where, I have on my resume somewhere like, oh, I've saved $15 million, and I, got a beautiful bonus, like, extra 5 or 10%. And I remember being like, I am so lucky and I'm so blessed. And now I think back on that and I'm like, how does that math make sense?
right. You didn't get $15 million for doing that anywhere close. But where you are now, you're also operating in a different level of zeros, right? Like you used to operate in, millions and hundreds of millions or billions or whatever. And you're at a tiny little startup mode.
Totally.
And, you've just adapted and adjusted your brain. I think it's interesting when you talk about how, you don't want to go like into debt. Like there's a financial side to this, like where you are. But I also see you gaining so many skills. Like if you were to run this as, let's say, not that you will, but let's say it's a 1-year pilot and then you went back to look for a job. What do you see that you're gaining right now, like in terms of skills?
Oh my gosh. I would say there's two things that I have really, really exercised the skill muscle for. The first and the honest answer is like very clear delegation. I think what this has illuminated for me is, what do I need to be really clear on that I know and I get so right? And what do I need to be really clear on that I don't have the faintest idea? And also the ROI there of knowing like what is worth my time to spend and learn, and what potentially could I outsource, even though I'm running so bootstrapped and so, you know, uh, like on a shoestring budget. But things like creating really great content is something that I'm capable of. I worked at TikTok. I worked at Meta. I live and breathe content. I'm so good at knowing like, okay, here's the idea, here's the vision. But editing, in Canva, spending time doing this, like I know that this isn't my strong suit. I actually am paying my nanny as her side hustle through the business to do content for me, because she is, an exquisite Gen Z tastemaker. And she enjoys it and she's great at it. And I don't enjoy it and I'm not great at it.
And I
And so
love
I
that you're
have
looking in your very near circle of like, who
totally.
do I know who could do this?
Who do I know who's great at it? And so what I've really started doing is, I've used this actually through my AI chief of staff, is every day I do a very quick, just like 2-minute audit of what are all the things I did today and what are tasks that are under, let's say, a $25 hour threshold. Specifically, I land on that number. What did I do that I could outsource for less than $25 an hour?
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
that has really helped me accelerate my time. So one of the things also, part of Parcel Air and part of the magic, is that all of the presents are hand wrapped. They're not just like in a box, because that was the one thing all the time that I would get so much feedback from people on, of being like, I can't believe I haven't thought about this. How ingenious that is, because, especially with a 2-year-old at 30,000 feet, like every second counts. And sometimes for my 2-year-old, it takes her just as long to unwrap the present as it does to like play with a toy car inside, And so I have like my very sweet cousin comes over. I pay her there too. And the kids play in the backyard while we have a glass of wine and we wrap presents. Because again, that's one of the things for me this is under $25 an hour, but it does eat the days. And it's very easy, I think, to go into, a situation like this and be like, I need to do it all. And I've been there. I mean, I feel like I've lived so many lives the last 5 weeks, but I need to know how to do the Shopify ads. I need to do fulfillment. I need to do procurement. I need to make sure we are like GDPR compliant across all of our workflows, all of these things that I'm like, no, I don't need to be the person pressing the button. I have people in my network who are incredible, who want to help out, who are also looking for ways to, learn and grow and be ambitious and lean into their strengths and their interests. And so tapping into those resources have been truly incredible. The other thing I think that has been so illuminating for me is just the community and the network of people who are there's so much good in the world. And I feel like that can get eroded very quickly when you're working in such competitive, high paced environments for so long. You build up around you a wall or a paranoia of being like, when somebody wants a coffee chat, what do they really want? Like, do they want a job? Do they want, to vet?
You try and parse the 6 words in that invite and think of all the different things it could mean when it's
Like,
really
why are
just
you going to
six
yell at
words.
me? Truly, truly. And so just the outpouring of support from so many people everywhere who I've shared this with, who I've had so many wonderful chats where people are like, tell me more, let me help you with no strings, with no expectations, simply entrepreneurs, founders, or even just people who are interested in the product who've like reached out and just been like, not only am I supporting financially, which blast, but also like, how can I help? How can you leverage my network? Who can I share this with? Which has just been so refreshing and so like illuminating where there's so many people who just want to see you succeed with no obligation, with no transactional relationship. That is really, I think, quickly changed my perspective on the world.
That's amazing. If you can have your own business, which is clearly very values aligned. That's one of the things that has come up repeatedly in how you've described it
Yeah.
is the product that you're building, the customers that you're serving, the way that you're building your own business down to the employees, not employees, but your cousin and your nanny and, the other people that you have helping like that. That's so values aligned for you, I can tell. And that intentionality seems to be changing just the way your world operates, the way that what
100%.
you're living in.
100%.
Wow. Okay, cool. I was going to ask you all kinds of questions about AI, but you've already really shared your answer on it. I will share. I think your graphics are very cool. So your content up there is good, but your graphics are very good too. Did you
Thank you.
use AI to create those?
I don't use AI to create the graphics because for me, it is working with AI and working in AI. You asked about my title. It was like a head of AI transformation. I feel like I am the most critical viewer of it. And I think there are so many things that AI is so good at. AI is so great at, what I was mentioning, being my chief of staff, of, creating project plans for me, doing deep research on SEO and marketing and how to set up the perfect Shopify ad. But where I think when I see content and I get like the ick, if you will, or like cringe, is the content that is supposed to be vulnerable and touching people. And I think, you and we met on Substack. I really see the rise of Substack being sort of a result of the increase of AI. I think people yearn for a return of long form content, of, unpolished content. And so with that, I'm very bullish on, there's a place for AI and there's a place for human design and human focus. And something that AI is never going to replace is taste, is the idea of this. I can think of a couple examples of where I've used AI, where I've immediately been like, no, what? One of them was sourcing new products. So I mentioned, we just launched, which I'm really excited about, our next wave of ages. So we have a parcel for 0 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 6. Again, all of them are, developmentally appropriate to keep those specific tiny hands engaged. And we were launching our 6 to 8, and I don't have a 6 to 8 year old. My oldest is
You're like,
4.
I haven't bought those before.
I'm like, I don't know. I don't have any nieces or nephew who are that age. I'm like, I don't know this demographic. So I was using Claude to help me source ideas. What does the iteration of this look like? What are the product ideas? For the littlest kids, we have the board books that, are, you can't break them or rip them. You could chew on them. Then we have a flap book, and then we have like a tracing book. And I was like, can 6-year-olds read? And it felt like, I'm like, 6-year-olds and 8-year-olds are very different in terms of the ability for language. I was like, what does that even look like? And when I went into Claude and I had to, do deep research, and it created a very beautifully visual list for me, with options, but all of them just landed so flat to me. I was like, it didn't feel right, or it was optimizing for just purely cost and not, the brand values of like trusted brands, or, like indie makers or things like that. And it wasn't until I ran it by a girlfriend of mine who has a 7-year-old, and I was like, just keep me honest here. This is what has been recommended to me, but none of these are landing for me. She was like, oh God, no. And her and I got on a call and we talked it out. And I was able to then kind of just have that self-realization of being like, I know what I'm doing. Like, I'm a mom. I might not know the very specifics, but I need to have a lot more direction on where this is going, and not just accepting, what the deep research shows. And that really like taste and curation is the thing that I just don't think AI will ever replace.
You're talking to someone who named their Substack, "The Future is Uniquely Human." So I am 100% on board with you on that. And I think for me, what I hear is it's really the customer facing pieces, like the words you use, the way
Totally.
that you visually represent it, and of course the product, like the choice of the product. All the
Totally.
back end, all the, how the website works and the money gets in and all that kind of
Yeah,
thing. And organizing you and your prioritization, like AI can help with that. But you
exactly.
still really want that human, and when you need to figure out what a 6 to 8-year-old needs, it's like, go to the hive mind. Like, go ask the people who have raised all those little tiny humans.
Exactly. And it even goes, like it's kind of the entire thesis of the brand is, how do I lift that emotional burden that's on so many parents of creating these moments of magic and creating these beautiful rituals you can have as a family. And none of that comes from like AI slop or anything like that. And one of the things I did with AI, which was very helpful, is I was like, let me see like what are competitors doing, or what one great news is there really isn't a competitor. So I was like, great, I have a niche. But in small boutique toy companies, there's so much that I think immediately, as just like a savvy, as an internet shopper, of somebody who has a card memorized so I can type it in the middle of the night, I'm like, this is drop shipped. This is junk. Like, I've seen this. I know what this is. Like, this is, you know, they have beautiful content, great ads, but I'm like, oh, I know that this is just an 100% markup drop ship situation. And I think that just stands out so palpably for me that I am with this brand just taking such a stark differentiator of being like, no, this is, if, hopefully one day we'll scale, but for right now, it's quite literally me hand wrapping presents at my kitchen table with my cousin over a glass of wine while our kids run in the sprinkler outside. Like, it is as anti AI as a product as it comes.
Right. Right.
But I am using AI to run the back end, which is crazy.
And that's all really become possible in the last 2 years at
Months,
most. But
I would say,
like,
even.
yeah,
Yeah.
6 months is really where I want to land on that in terms of like that capability. You talk about doing the work with your kids there running in the sprinkler. I wonder if anything's changed for you in, that concept of work-life balance. And it always used to be explained to me as work-life balance versus work-life integration. And, we can all say like, ugh, that's a joke, that work-life balance thing, like it never existed. it sounds very integrated for you now.
So
How do you think
integrated.
about it?
There's a great there's like a Japanese principle of Ikigai. Are you familiar?
It's like literally my next workshop. I haven't announced it yet, but you'll give me the preview to it. So
I
I
can't wait,
live
and
and
I can't
die
wait to
by
get on
that.
the wait
Yes.
list.
Yes.
It is the work life integration. It's once you, and you know what? I actually had this conversation when I was a year ago, when I was, really doing that values exercise of understanding. I had this conversation with my nanny, actually, who was fully living the work life integration and had found her purpose in Ikigai of she loves early childhood work and she loves working with children. And she had mentioned, I said something to her being like, oh, you like, you must be so exhausted at the end of the day. And she was like, no, oh my gosh. Like at the end of the day, I'm like rallying my girlfriends to go out, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, how could that be? And it was
You're like, that's not
because,
my Ikigai.
no, that is not. And I was like, how could that be? And I remember like telling so many people about it and being like, this is just a lovely novel idea that exists somewhere out there, but it's never going to be me, especially like working in such a high paced environment and things like that. But now I like look back at that time and laugh because I'm like, that is what I have now of just such a it's beyond ikigai, I think even, and it's such a, like, a positive relationship with work
Well,
that
and for people who haven't heard it, it's what are you good at? What do you love to do? What does the world need? And what you can get paid for. And it is a bit of an American interpretation of that Japanese
it
concept.
is. It's a beautiful Venn diagram, for all of my planners, but I think what it really has done, it's, like, gone a little bit past that and just had transformed my relationship with work and ambition. One, just redefining it, but now having such a positive relationship with stress even. And I feel that, and I actually can see that reflected so much in how my children talk about work. I mentioned earlier, like how, that gut wrenching moment for me of my son being like, all right, mommy won't be here in the morning, and how heartbreaking that is. And now we had an exciting partner come to the home and they wanted to film content. And he introduced himself as like my co-founder, which was darling. It's not something I had coached him on.
Oh,
He
your
just was
son.
like, my son, my 4-year-old. He was like, hi, I'm Ari. I'm the co-founder, which is darling and hilarious. But I was like, he's kind of right because of our parcel air. I'm like, we call it play testing. I get a sample from a brand and I'm like, I'm not putting it in unless I believe in it. So if this can keep him occupied on the floor while I'm cooking dinner for 40 minutes, then like it's a win. If he gets bored of it in 10 minutes, it's not a win. And he feels so excited and passionate about like helping me build the boxes, like put the labels on it. And he's like such an integrated part of it that he's excited about it and he's like happy. And I think it's completely, especially with the early childhood, like it's what's reflected in them, right? Like before it would be like, mommy has a call, don't go in there, or like things like this. And now it's like, can I help? I'm so excited. Or like, what are we shipping out today? Like, let's go to UPS. I feel it internally, but I can also see it reflected back to me. Just the distinct difference and the positive relationship with work that is honestly even just like more motivating than any like external reward would be.
Right. Before we wrap up, I want to ask if you have any advice for people that are out there that are in this similar place and they have, these little ideas in the
Mm,
background of what they're thinking of. Like, what advice would you give to somebody? And especially if they've just, had the universe tell them that this is their time.
that is a great question. Okay. I thought about this actually before. And I would give people like three things in order. The first is like feel the grief, like feel the emotions. If somebody is, especially in my scenario, if somebody is laid off, that doesn't disappear and you can't just like work yourself out of it. It's just delaying it until later. So, I started by LLC. I was laid off at 4 a.m. I had LLC by 9 a.m. I felt the grief, definitely. And if I were going to do it again, I would give myself 24 hours to actually lean in, feel it, and not be so reactive. I think I, made a lot of ideas in my head and I made a lot of plans and they all changed because of course they all changed. But I then felt a slowdown later that I was like, I should have just approached this more transparently with myself before just jumping into the next thing and feeling the urge to just be productive. The second thing I would really recommend is what I did of giving myself a contained sprint. So, giving yourself whatever that looks like, if it's 4 weeks, if it's 6 weeks, of having really, really tangible, palpable milestones and goals, being like, on this day, I'm doing this, on this day I'm doing that, because again, like what didn't work for me or what didn't accelerate any growth was doing it in the margins of doing something a little bit of the way, because those are anything you're doing for yourself, especially of starting a new business, of, pursuing something happens in the margins. And because it's for yourself, if you're like me, it's the first thing to pop off the to-do list when you could do something in service of others or for your family or things like this. So really guarding that time. And then the third thing I would really recommend is like, just go. Like, get the momentum. And if possible, like do it publicly. I've been posting on LinkedIn. I've been posting on Substack. I've been posting on my personal Instagram for my 32 followers. And it's, content that I thought would feel cringy or like, the last thing I ever want to be is a LinkedIn influencer, right? Like, it's like that's a little bit too taboo. But I think what's really helped is just like getting the evidence outside of my own head that it is a good idea, that I am making the right steps, that I am building a community, and that I've gotten so many, again, messages from people who just want to help, to lend a hand, to lend their expertise, to lend their connections. That if I was doing this in private and not doing it publicly, one, I would feel less motivated because I love a little accountability. I love a deadline. I love a commitment to be made, but also doing it publicly has just opened so many doors for me that if I was keeping this inside and, doing it on the margins or doing it more privately that I would have never made, we wouldn't be sitting here today. And so I'm so
I wouldn't have
grateful.
met you.
Correct. And look at us now.
I know.
We have so much, we've talked for so long. We have so much to talk about. I can't wait to go to your next your webinar on Ikigai. But
Yes.
there's just, yeah, it's opened so many doors of growth that I would never have seen. So those are my advices. Feel it deeply, allow yourself to feel grief, give yourself that opportunity. And then the second is just go, but go with a
Yeah.
plan. Make a plan, carve out the time, hold it sacred, and, build in public.
Build in public, let people see the messy. Like I just appreciate your honesty and vulnerability. And one of the things that you said is you still have a nanny, because I feel like there's so many people out there that are like, oh, and I do all this. And it's like, no, you can't do this whole thing if you're raising a, full-time 2-year-old and 4-year-old. Like, so I appreciate the honesty around you have a severance package that is providing you some financial security to get there. You have people taking care of your kids. And then, in the margins, you get to wrap packages with your 4-year-old.
Totally.
As somebody who flew a lot with my son in the first 2 years, my son hit Premier on United Airlines before he turned 1. And that was honestly but that was the gut punch to me. The gut punch to me was when a flight attendant, I had been coming home on a Friday and she was on my flight. And then we were flying out on a Monday. And she looked at me and my son and she said, "You fly more than I do." And I was like, oh my gosh, she's getting paid to fly. And I am here with an infant and sometimes a nanny, and I'm flying more than she does. How is that a thing? So we all get our gut punches. Where should people come find you? Tell people where they can find you for your story and Parcel Air, so they can, for anybody out there who has little ones that they want to have a peaceful time on the airplane.
Love it. The best place to find me and follow the whole journey is on my Substack, which is called From the Desk of EFD. And again, there I write about ambition and motherhood, and am very much living the value of building it in public. And if somebody is in, a career transition and wants to partner in it, I also do some coaching and would love to help. But for anyone who has little ones and a trip on the calendar, you can find parcelair at parcelair.co and parcel_air, Instagram, TikTok. And I think everything's going to be in the show notes as well.
Absolutely. All the links will be in there so people can come find you. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for being so open about the journey, about how you landed here and the grief that comes with it, because it's a complicated journey. And I just appreciate that you were willing to share even like everything that led up to this. You know, as much as you know things are coming, it can still be a gut punch when it happens.
100%.
Okay, keep
100%.
keep building in public. We will be here cheering for you.
Thanks,
Elizabeth. Elizabeth is an inspiration to anybody who's out there building their own thing right now. And I'm excited for all of us to be able to follow her journey in public. If you're interested in finding your own Ikigai, my next workshop this fall will be Find Your Next. And you can sign up for the waitlist at ericaparkerprice.com/find your next. There's no commitment needed, but you'll be the first to find out. Thanks for listening and have a great week.